Okay, we're in this beautiful area by this beautiful park. We're gonna go see just how they changed this. What does it look like? What it look like? So, yeah, we kind of made some little waterfalls. It's cooler in this area for sure. Very beautiful. Very beautiful here. Oh look. There's somebody over there in the water. I don't know what he's doing in the water, but he's over there in the water. Maybe he's taking a bath. But they had designed it to where you can walk down this way, walk across the bridge, come around here, and then walk back up. Very beautiful. And then they have like businesses, restaurants and stuff, you know, some homes, you know, overlooking this nice little designed area. I want to see how big this waterfall is over here. Because this one looks a little bit bigger than that one. But look at that. Oh my gosh, that's just so beautiful. Oh, look at this. Look how they designed this. They designed it to where it cascades off of the stairs and then goes into the pool, and the pool eventually goes out into what looks like Lake Ray Hubbard. So yeah, let me go see. Okay, so this is Lake Ray Hubbard, and they have made a trail along the riverfront, and that's where I'm trying to go. So I'm gonna have to go back up and around. But yeah, not all of the water is going to seep off into Lake Ray Hubbard, but some will. Okay, some. So this is what it looks like. Isn't that beautiful? Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is what it looks like. We're down here on the harbor front. There is a nice wind down here. The wind off of the water makes it a lot cooler, for sure. For sure. Oh look, there's a beautiful sailboat over there. It's just beautiful here. It really is. So I decided to sit down and let my Snoopy baby get a rest. Like I said, you know, after a couple of 100 feet, she slows down. After 300 or 400 feet, you know, she starts dragging. So we went about 300 feet, 400 feet, and I think she wants to rest. But they have really built up this area into like a harbor area. It's on a lake, but the lake is huge. And then you have the freeway over there. Yeah, it's really nice. Tell me if this boat doesn't look like it's capsizing or on the verge of capsizing. Look. Can you see it? Right over there. It looks like it is struggling. Then there's another motorized boat over there where, you know, if this boat ever really got into danger, you know, they could get assisted, right? So we're just sitting underneath the tree here on the grass, you know, sitting here on the grass. My Snoopy baby, she wasn't used to, you know, just relaxing. I almost had to push her down onto the ground. Yeah, I did. I pushed her down on the ground and told her to rest. I did. Because I told her, I said, look, you're going to have to rest because you're going to have to take those 400 steps back to the vehicle. So you might as well get used to the rest. But she's just innately, you know, naturally a guard dog that, you know, she doesn't know how to rest. So, I did pull out my portable hammock that I had bought. Look at that boat. Does it not look like it's capsizing? It won't capsize if it doesn't take on water, right? But I did pull out my my portable hammock. You don't need any trees. It comes with a stand, and I put it together. Actually, I had put it together before, just didn't realize that, you know, I had outweighed the hammock. I did. I outweighed the hammock. I thought it wasn't working. I'm like, this should be adjustable. Right. When really my weight should have been adjusted before I got on the hammock. So now if, you know, I want to go and, you know, stay somewhere, you know, for hours or long periods of time, you know, I can use my portable hammock that I have bought from Aldi's. I can't even remember how much it was, but compared to other hammocks, you know, it was fairly inexpensive, and it didn't require, you know, to have a couple of trees. You can set it up anywhere. It's portable. It has its own bag, you know, so I had thought about, you know, trying to use that and go set up somewhere where I can watch, you know, the fireworks. But, you know, I couldn't because my dog gets highly upset with loud noises like that. You know, every time she hears a bang, 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 boom, 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 you know, she goes into an uproar. She starts running back and forth, barking, you know, just, I love her so much. And there's just no way I would have left her in the house by herself during, you know, all the, you know, horrid noise. She don't like it. And you should see her and how upset she gets when there's I'm sure the boat is on its way over there to the harbor, because there is a boat harbor over there. But my goodness, I would hate to be people in that boat today. But like I was saying, you know, the spiritual community will have people who believe that, you know, the only thing that you really need to be concerned about is your sun sign, your moon sign, and your ascendant. But actually, those are like your operational modems. Okay, those are your operational modems. Your sun, your moon, and your rising. Those are your operational modems. Now, what you're composed of are, you know, the elements, right? Those elementals, those planets that take long time to move, right? Like right now, Uranus is moving into the house of Gemini. So there's going to be, you know, new innovative ways in our intelligence and the way we communicate for the next 7 years. Period. Okay? Now, how that affects your planet, it really depends on, you know, where Gemini falls into your chart. Also, where Mercury falls into your chart, right? If you're part of the plural-minded people, which is from Libra to Pisces, you know, you're going to be looking at it from a different viewpoint than the single-minded entities that, you know, are from Aries to Virgo, right? So that answered my question as to why, you know, even though I knew I had the ability to be intelligent, my spirit said, no, you know, you are mainly composed of all of the fixed signs. And therefore, it's kind of like my responsibility to understand, you know, that meme, you know, we're only as strong as our weakest link. You know, and that explains to me why I always have my eye on our weakest link. Even though, you know, my heart and my ego wants to press forward, I can't. I won't. I could, but I would be responsible for not positioning my elements in the way that they're supposed to be positioned. If that makes sense, great. If it doesn't, you have more studying to do. Well, my Snoopy baby says she is ready. She ready to go back to the car. Look at her. Look at her, look at her. She got up. So, yeah, let's go take a small view of this waterfront area. They did have the fountains on over here. They do have a beautiful fountain area. Got some nice restaurants here. Sears Steakhouse, Rodeo Goat, 360 Lounge. They have a theater here also. But I think they designed this area here to be like a fountain light show. I haven't been out here at nighttime, but I suspected that's what's going on with these big pods here. That the pods will reflect some type of lighting. Either lighting or water. So it says, the Fountain Plaza was not designed as a play feature and should not be used as such. Visitors are expected to be aware that the water features in harbor are not intended for interactive use, that appropriate attire and activity is appreciated. So, y'all can't be playing in the water fountain. Glorious. I think that's a restaurant. We don't want to go up the stairs. Let's go up this ramp over here. Okay, so it does look like this little area over here is an area that can be booked where people can give concerts by the waterfront at nighttime, daytime. It says 2025 concert by the Lake Series. It does have some bookings. Looks like for July there was probably about 3 of them. And you can see who's booked here on playrockwall.com. Okay, this used to be my favorite right here, but I can't use these. And they won't list the price because it depends on the market. I used to love the crab claws. They were like little miniature crab claws cooked in garlic butter. It was so delicious, so delicious. My most favorite tree, the magnolias. These don't really have a scent, but they're very, very fragrant. Very, very fragrant. Either that or my nose, yeah, I have congestion for sure. So, okay. So we had a beautiful excursion, and I think I have just enough juice to make it back to the house. Now, part of the reason why I went on this excursion is not only, for the sake of my dog to get some outside air, fresh air, kind of revitalize herself, push her beyond, normality, okay? And also to record, my videos. But also because, like I said, I had left out of the house, resentful at the notion that, my food allocation is depleting, right? I ran out of coffee. I used the last bit of my coffee today. And if I'm going to buy coffee, it's not going to be in the framework of my food voucher. I had watched a couple of other videos of, women with children, or even families with children. I've seen where families with children, a lot of the food that they have to buy is processed foods. It's very expensive to buy natural foods. A lot of them will shop at whole food stores or foods that offer whole foods, but I could sense in their demeanor that the organic food that they had to buy were processed organic food. Which, is interesting concept to me. But, okay. Because, processed foods, it contains a lot of sodium. And now, I was watching this other lady who's been, managing her high blood pressure. In the process of her managing her high blood pressure, she has to read every label of foods that she buys, and she was so surprised how many foods either had sugar or salt in them. Okay? And yeah, if you're starting to have complications because of your intake of sugar or salt or both, you're gonna have to, be more conscientious. Here's another thing. Yesterday, like, I don't have any snacks in my house, right? So I ended up cooking shrimp for both my meals and my snacks. That's not something that I was used to doing at all, right? Even though the shrimp was very delicious, the shrimp was very nutritious, the shrimp was also, light in calories, it still wasn't what I was used to craving. What I was used to craving was probably something sweet, something processed. Now, I had chips, and I did eat some chips. I ain't gonna lie. But then, instead of going for that extra large serving of chips, I decided to go ahead with a serving of pumpkin seeds. Now, all of these changes are not initially sitting with me well. Now, afterwards, you just dodged who knows how many bullets, right? And when it came to eating something sweet, the only thing that I had to eat that was sweet was the dried cran raisins. You know, totally different from what I was used to, what I was used to indulging in, right? Because in my mind it was like, wow, this would be great to have popsicles. It would be great to have, you know, some ice cream. It would be great to have, you know. Speaking of ice cream, now I was watching some videos on the way that some creative people had decided that they was going to, you know, make their own ice cream. And the way that they was going to make their own ice cream was using yogurt and Jell-O. Right? When I had went to go buy my food, I couldn't even wrap my head around how, you know, a box of Jell-O is $2.49. Like, a box of Jell-O is $2.49. Yeah, that was a sugar-free. It was a sugar-free Jell-O. But it was still $2.49, right? I didn't buy them because I was already over my budget. But, yeah. Temperature right now is 90 degrees. I'm sweating, even with the air conditioning blowing on me. You know, and shout out again to Wanderlust, right? Wanderlust, you know, she has, you know, managed, you know, her blood pressure to now just being high, not in the danger zone. And she was so happy, you know, and that achievement is what had allowed her to be more conscientious that, you know, she can do this. All she has to do is set her intentions on reading these labels and recognizing the effects of sugar and salt. Right? So, yeah, I had just enough to make this loop around my my area, and off my mind. I can't emphasize enough how important, if you're going to do energy work, if you're going to be a holistic practitioner, how important it is to know astrology. It's just important. I also want to reiterate that there are empresses of the cardinal signs. There are empresses of the mutable signs. I just want to emphasize that. Which means that they have placements in all of those elements, significant placements. It can be beneficial placements, but they could also be malignant placements. Not all placements are positive placements or easy placements. Even significant asteroids, significant asteroids like Lilith, the placement of your Lilith, if you know where it's at, and it's say it's a malefic placement, right? If it's a malefic placement, that's a caution for you to understand, that's going to be something that you're going to have to monitor and keep it under control. Some people, they may have, a benefic placement with Lilith. I personally have a benefic placement with Lilith. Well, it could seem like it's benefic. I would say it's a symbiotic placement. Well, if we're looking at a benefic placement as one that's not at home, but it's a good relationship. Benefic and symbiotic can be, kind of synonymous. Okay, and every planet has its own characteristics, its own group of energy to it. We can call it energy, we can call it entities, we can call it elements. Okay, so yeah, it's complex, and that's usually the reason why most people don't want to thoroughly learn astrology, because it's complex. And not only is it complex, but there's also percentages, right? There's also percentages. I was listening to a content creator who is presently having an altercation with one of her friends. Well, no longer her friend. And that's what she was stating, that you are no longer my friend, basically because she felt like, her friend was a taker, very selfish, only thinks about herself. And, this was one Taurus, going online, and she was blasting a Pisces. And I'm like, oh yeah, you can expect that if you go out with a Pisces, that Pisces is going to drink and will probably come across somebody that she will want to have an encounter with. Right? That's that's kind of like their nature, just about. You can't really expect people to change who they are. Because if you think about the house of Pisces, the 12th house, it is about them indulging and fantasizing and, very quick, to jump into situations. Now, what happens afterwards is a different situation. A lot of them, they get upset because, they might feel used, the day after. The day after they very well might feel used, right? Because the person that they had encountered was like, hey, we just went with the flow, didn't we? Why you mad? I remember, what was it, about almost 7 years ago, there was this high priestess in the collective, who was really mad at the fact that she had ran across somebody that they kind of just went with the flow in in a short, quick, hearty episode. She was mad. She was like, no, you're not going to take advantage of me. And at the same time, there was really no commitment done there, because it was downloaded to me that the things that had happened rather quickly in a vehicle. Right? It wasn't even, it wasn't even a date. It was just, something that happened real quick in a vehicle. And anyway, she was mad. Right? But when I found out that, that this was actually a Pisces, I was like, come on, Pisces, stop it. You know how you are. And what I'm saying about Pisces is Pisces are real quick to get caught up in their emotions, right? When I think about somebody that might, have sex in the car, have sex in the restroom of a restaurant or a bar, or leave, an outing or a gathering, to go and have random sex, that's the first sign I think about. Or somebody that has significant Pisces placements. Like, oh, okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. Right? What surprises me is when the Pisces don't recognize their actions, or they feel like their actions should be an acceptable reaction. And it's like nobody's thinking any kind of way except, an acceptance that, you get caught up in the flow of emotions. And if somebody can convince you to go all the way, you go all the way. Now, will people worry about them? Yeah. The people who went out with them, they're hoping that they stay safe. They're hoping that, nothing's happened to them. A lot of people who have Pisces placements, they don't understand that other people see them putting themselves in dangerous situations, right? And the average person wouldn't be able to get out of unharmed. And to our surprise, most of the time, Pisces are able to get out of those situations unharmed. But, the average person is not going to take those kind of odds, and it could be because, of their diversified, ability to think that, enable them to land on their feet afterwards. It's not all Pisces, it depends on their placements. Some Pisces, like I said, they may have, other placements that are like, you took advantage of me, and you think you just gonna hit it and run, and and yeah. Okay, you can't lump all Pisces in that same bracket.